Now you might ask yourself what the point of the wheel of life is for a Buddhist, from the point of view of a Buddhist. And we could say that there are three main points about studying the wheel of life. The first is that it gives knowledge. The second is that it triggers compassion. And the third is that it motivates what we call renunciation. So I'm going to go through all three, one by one. So first of all, studying the Wheel of Life brings knowledge. And in particular, quite specifically, it brings knowledge of the Buddhist way of understanding the world. Basically, the Wheel of Life depicts samsara, the realm of conditioned existence, and therefore it describes all the different types of life experience that beings go through in conditioned existence. And those different types of experience are correlated with the different circumstances into which they are born. Because to a large extent, actually, circumstance determines our life experience. So in this way, studying the Wheel of Life gives us knowledge and understanding about the whole range of different possible experiences in life. And it also opens our minds to the variety of different beings in the world. It takes us way beyond just simply the human condition and human life, and opens out our minds to the existence of other types of beings who have different experiences and who live in quite different circumstances as well. So it broadens our mind in terms of the world in general. Because, for example, the Buddhist understanding is that not all beings have bodies, for example. There are some beings who exist without a physical body. So they cannot be seen or perceived in the normal way. So, in that sense, the Wheel of Life gives us a broader perspective on life. Now, when we consider the 6 realms of samsara as psychological states, this can help us understand ourselves better, because we learn to identify the various states of mind we go through within a single day or over a period of time, or over life itself. We go through all of these different states of mind at some point in our lives, and so it just helps us identify them. And we have a clearer and more precise understanding of how the mind works and what triggers our feelings and the sort of quality and nature of our experiences. So in addition, the Wheel of Life illustrates all the causal connections that are at work, creating life as we know it. And these are depicted, as you know, on the outer rim of the wheel as the 12 links of dependent arising. And they explain how one thing leads to another. The chain reaction process that basically creates the states of mind and the types of experience that we have in life. So to summarize, what is it that the Wheel of Life teaches a Buddhist? It brings knowledge of the different worlds and of the different beings that inhabit those worlds. It brings knowledge of how the mind functions and how the mind gives rise to experience of our world. So all of that is sort of contained. The Wheel of Life can be unpacked, if you like, in terms of all these different aspects. So it's a very comprehensive diagram, if you like, covering a huge range of things. And actually, it might be helpful to remember a particular quotation from the Buddha in the Dhammapada, where he says, "Our life is shaped by our mind. We become what we think. Suffering follows an evil thought as the wheels of a cart follow the oxen that draw it. Our life is shaped by our mind. We become what we think. Joy follows a pure thought like a shadow that never leaves." So these are the opening verses of the Dhammapada, if you want to look them up. And they express this principle of a correlation between the state of our minds, the experience we have of life, and the actual circumstances we find ourselves in. Now, the second point about studying the Wheel of Life for a Buddhist is that it helps us arouse compassion. In technical terms, you could say that this particular aspect of the sort of benefits of learning about the Wheel of Life is soteriological. That's the technical term. In other words, it helps somebody progress on their own spiritual path. It doesn't just simply give them knowledge for the sake of knowledge itself. It gives them knowledge which then translates into making a connection with the experience of all these different beings. And that is going to trigger our compassion. And that will develop our own compassion. So therefore it's good for us on our own spiritual path. So the whole idea of this Wheel of Life, which is like a huge, vast cycle of life and death and rebirth, it provides a perspective on life which supports sympathy and respect for other beings. Because we are like all other beings. And we're all part of this cycle going round and round. Each human being, the Buddhist perspective is that each human being, each one of us, has been an animal or a hungry ghost or a hell being and so forth at one time or another. Because as we keep moving from one existence to another, we don't just simply get reborn as a human being. We might be reborn, depending on our karma, in another realm. So if you imagine that we've been sort of continuing being reborn in this Wheel of Life for eons, then the likelihood is that we have had at one point or another the experience of being in all of these different realms. So, and on top of that, there's the prospect that when we take rebirth in the future, that will also continue, right? So in other words, the idea is that we're not just human. Human beings are not somehow separate from all these other types of beings. We're all interconnected if you take a big enough perspective. And so then that creates a sense of closeness, of affinity with different types of beings. And for us, that could be animals, for example, because we relate to animals very easily, a lot of us. So it brings some sort of shared experience, mainly of suffering, but shared experience of happiness and suffering and all the different ups and downs of life with other beings. So from this perspective, it actually means that the experience of suffering is like a common denominator between all types of beings. All beings in samsara. It's our common ground. It actually brings us together in that way. So that, in our hearts and minds, that creates a connection, right? So it's not just knowing what's going on out there. It brings it closer to home, and it makes us actually realize there's this very deep connection between us and all other beings. So by reflecting on the suffering of beings in these different realms, we can develop our love and compassion for others. And the way this is done is to imaginatively put ourselves in the shoes of these other beings and really try and feel what their experience is like from their own side. And this develops empathy and a sort of sense of closeness, almost intimacy, you could say. Trying to understand how someone feels from the inside in a sympathetic, empathetic way. So instead of thinking of the realms as being at a remove and somehow unconnected with our world, we discover the common ground of life experience that we share with all beings in all situations. So the differences between us all are a matter of degree only. We realise this especially when we consider the 6 realms of samsara as psychological states, right? Because then it's really quite easy to see that all states apply to us in the same way as that they apply to other people too. Yeah. So with this understanding, we discover this deep connection with others, and love and compassion arise naturally. So to reflect in this way, it's easiest to begin with the human realm or with the animal realm, because those are the realms that we know and we experience, in our everyday lives. We have first-hand knowledge of them, if you like. So we imagine the various kinds of suffering experienced by humans or by animals, and we're as specific as possible, right? A battery chicken. What does that feel like? Right? Or a hunted animal. Or a fish in the sea trying to swim away from a predator. Whatever. So many different examples. But we really try to feel from the inside what it's like being in that situation. And actually this process, this reflection, opens our mind to what the wheel of life is all about. The wheel of life is simply a diagram. It's what is describing is this experience that I'm talking about. Now, the third point of studying the wheel of life for a Buddhist is what we call renunciation. So when we reflect on the wheel of life again and again, that leads to what is called in Buddhism a sense of renunciation. But we need to understand this properly, because it doesn't mean to say we renounce life or we give up life and there's no point in living anymore or anything like that. That would be a misunderstanding. What it does mean is that it does bring about a significant shift in the way we see life and what our priorities are. We realise that if we continue pursuing worldly goals and we continue to be sort of slave to all our emotions and habits and tendencies without any control, then we are going to continue going round and round, life after life, in this wheel of samsaric existence. In other words, we are going to perpetuate the experience of suffering for life after life after life, for long periods of time. We'll just keep going round endlessly, the way beings do. So we realise that unless we start working with our own minds on trying to change our habits and tendencies, on eliminating whatever bad or harmful emotions we have, then basically we will just continue to perpetuate our suffering. There is no other way out then taking responsibility and trying to work with our own minds, which are at the root of the whole thing, as depicted in the Wheel of Life, in the hub of the wheel of the three mental poisons. They are at the root of the entire thing. So with this understanding, we develop a deep wish to free ourselves from samsara. And that is what we call renunciation, right? Now, what that translates as is the wish to follow a spiritual path, to work on ourselves with this sort of spiritual goal in mind. It doesn't mean to say we give up life. It doesn't mean to say we don't have a job and a family and live on the surface like everyone else, right? Renunciation is internal. It's an attitude. It's an understanding. It doesn't mean to say you have to become a yogi in a mountain cave. It doesn't mean that. Very few people will ever be successful as yogis in mountain caves. Yeah. So basically, it means that we're not limited by short-term goals, and we have a longer-term perspective in terms of the choices we make in life, the priorities we have. It just gives us a slightly different perspective on how we manage our lives. In other words, the sort of practical considerations are not the only ones. They are there, and we have to honour them. But we also have this other understanding of a spiritual dimension to our existence, and we also take that into account. So, in other words, our vision is not confined to this life alone. It also encompasses future lives as well. And the future even of this life, even if we don't believe in future lives, even the future of this life. Because how you get old and how you die may also be partly determined by how you live as a child and as an adult. So these are the three main reasons why a Buddhist would happily study the Wheel of Life and what benefit they get from it.